What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I was on X today and I came across a question that I actually responded to. I think it was a great point of reference for how I see geopolitics, understand the world, and assess things. But this question comes from Michael Arrowet, who sent out the tweet. Basically, he said, I have never understood the massive economic gap in Italy. Why is the North, with its various industries, one of the wealthiest areas in Europe, while the South remains so extremely poor? Same country, same language, same culture, same laws and taxes. Can someone please explain? And I thought this was really interesting because I've come across this question a few times where a lot of people are curious about the economic disparity between the North and South of Italy. So this is my response. I said Italy is better understood as an aggregation of a peninsula rather than a unification of a nation. The North, which rose roughly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, became the gateway to continental European markets through its ports, textiles, and metallurgy. In contrast, the South was a child of the Mediterranean, shaped by low productivity agriculture and fragmented by mountainous terrain. Before 1861, Italy was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city states, where only an estimated 2.5% of the population actually spoke modern Italian. The Italian state did not create the North South disparity, but rather institutionalized an existing geographic reality. From a geopolitical perspective, modern Italy can be seen as centered on the Po Valley, fortified by the Alps to the north, the Balkans to the east, and the maritime cover from Sardinia to the west, while the southern half functions as a vassal, providing a buffer and strategic depth. So, the reason why I really thought that was interesting is Geopolitics 101. First off, observable outcomes. This person has obviously saw that there's an economic disparity between the North and South. This is a given. This is what is understood. The problem is the given didn't match their assumptions. And where they went wrong or where they are having a challenge is they didn't reassess their assumptions. If we know what the outcome is and it doesn't match your assumption, you must reevaluate your assumptions. You cannot reevaluate the given outcome. And what my answer served to do was to say, this is where you're assuming wrong. You're assuming that this is the same country, same language, same culture, same laws, same taxes. Yes, the environment is the same. But what I basically told this person is look at Italy. It's a reason why Rome was in the central portion of the country. The way the world expanded, especially around here, the cradle of civilization, right? It's four great ancient civilizations, as we can say in the old world. The Nile, Greece, Tigris Euphrates, Persia, Middle East area, and India and China, right? Those four. So this whole Tigris Euphrates, Persia, Greece area, this is one. You can kind of throw the Nile if you in there if you want to, but this is where ancient Greece comes from. The outgrowth of commerce. You know this is where it comes from because it wasn't the center. The center of all these civilizations. Now Greece, Persia, they're all no outliers of the cradle civilization, the great birthplace of agricultural domestication, Tigris Euphrates, that part of the world. And from this, it emanated. And this is why it was so important to be connected in the world because it was cultures that were outside of this, such as civilizations in America or in sub-Saharan Africa or in Australia, Oceania, that didn't have access to writing or didn't have access to the will. It's not because the people are inherently of a we could say of a lesser race or lesser caste. It's because they didn't have the level of integration to technology and advancement. Because what happened is, as Sun Tzu say in the Art of War, opportunities capitalizing on opportunities give you more opportunities to capitalize upon. So when things were discovered in this central part of the world, this eastern Mediterranean part of the world, it quickly was able to emanate to various parts of southeastern Europe, northeastern Africa, and the Middle East or Southwest Asia because they were all connected. So they benefited from iron sharpens iron. They benefited from each other and each other technological element, which made them sharper and more competitive. And it was that competition that really drove creativity. And this is why you see the civilizations expand outward because, especially in Europe, is because the Europeans like earliest Europeans or exposure and writing and being brought into written history starts in around the Greek area, Magna Graecia. This and in the area that the Greeks traveled across the Mediterranean, and then it emanates out, and over time it emanates further and further out. So it goes to Italy, and you can see these regions of the world start to come into historical record keeping around this time as well. You know, you start getting Spain or southern Germany, and then you start bringing in France until one of the later nations being on the world stage is England, but it's also one of the farthest countries from this part of the world. So as technology and industry advanced, other regions were brought in, but they all benefited from this core exposure. And for Italy, that was central and southern Italy in its birth stages, but it was never really unified. It fell under the empire of Rome, but then Rome fell. And what happened is over time, as economies develop, you have this northern part that isn't so much of Magna Graecia itself, but a bleed over of continental European industries. Um, there's Fondaco de Tedeschi in Venice. Basically means German warehouse because Venice was the key shipping port for southern German mines as well. Milan was famous for their Milanese swords of great quality because of that southern German mines. So you have this part, and even today, southern Germany is one of the wealthier parts of Germany. You have this bleed over of Central Europe coming in, and a lot of these, and it bleeds right over into this northern Po Valley area of Italy. So what you have is two distinctly different regions of one area. So if you really want, and just like my response say, if you really want to understand what Italy is, and if you was to look at the history of Italy and the unification of Italy, it was driven by the North, particularly all these cities or city states at the time occupying this northern Po Valley area. And the reason why is they may complain and pick on or deride the Southern Italians, but what Southern Italy does is gives them strategic and geographic depth. If Northern Italy then occupied that part of the peninsula, it invited foreign invaders, whether that be Muslims, Arabs, what one could say synonymous, other pirates, Vikings who were in the sea. Like these, it could have been a numerous foes that could have mastered maritime sailing and potentially invaded. In fact, if you looked at World War II and how the Allies invaded Central Europe, one of the key starting points was going through North Africa and up the southern shoe. They called Italy the soft underbelly of the Axis powers. So, and they came from that southern region. So it really is, if you're sitting in the northern pole, if you're one of these powerful city states sitting there, southern Italy, because it's on the land, it's continental, just like America didn't want a foreign power occupying continental America, being in Venezuela, Northern Italy doesn't want foreign powers occupying the southern peninsula because that would make them susceptible. So a lot of the push actually came from the north. Regardless, they look down and say, you guys are poor, et cetera, et cetera. Italy, the state we see as modern Italy, is built around this core, this industrial core that rose up from the Middle Ages. And these people are an outgrowth of the continental European markets. They have benefited from it. They were integrated for it. They were best suited for modernization for it. So, and we're at that southern portion. As I said, it was part of, but this is an ancient part of the country, a part of the country BC. This is Magna Graecia. This is Mediterranean. The age of Carthage, Phoenicia, ancient Egypt. This is what southern Italy occupied as. And so they really weren't built or brought in to the modernization. They didn't have the mines. They didn't have the connectivity by land, such the benefit that northern Italy has as well. So I just thought it was a great conversation because, and you know who else does that? And other people do it is like Germany some time ago used to talk about. They used to mock these Mediterranean countries. They used to call them pigs. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, because they used to say, "Oh, you guys, your finances are backwards, and you are a weak part." But in actuality, being in the Union benefited the strongest countries in the European Union the most. Because it gave them a strategic and geographic depth. It gave them markets where they can flood with their goods, and it also devalued their currency because, as a net whole, it made the currency weaker, which made exports more palatable. But had Germany at the time, and this is about 15, 20 years ago, there was a study done. It said had Germany at the time not been with had the EU currency, the Deutschmark would have been twice the value of what the euro was at the time. So by being with these poor countries, despite the public outrage of how they can't believe they're being weighed down by these weaklings, it actually benefited Germany greatly to have these markets where they can flood with their exports. And at that time, Germany was the second largest exporter in the world, only behind the United States. It was beating China at that time. But Germany benefited greatly, flooding these markets with its vehicles and machines, as well as devaluing its currency for it can compete internationally. And that was a great benefit. It wasn't the weaker countries that were being mocked, but it was actually the one that was really getting over were the Germans. And the same thing with Italy. Yes, Italy can say what they want about the southern regions, or they can have their prejudicial thoughts, but it really offers them, they wouldn't be with them if they didn't have to be with them. And they're doing so actually provide a lot more security and stability for the North had they not been able to unify the Italian peninsula. So just wanted to lay out some geopolitical rules and my fundamental thought logic on how I arrived at that answer. Would love to hear your thoughts. Comment below. If you like, share, subscribe. And thanks for joining me today. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.